Hello, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. My name is Hallie and I'm so happy that you're here. Today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of September. September wrap up. I had such a good reading month in September, but it's so funny because as I was like thinking about doing this video, I was like, oh, I need to go ahead and pull out like all of the books that I read this month. And September was the month of physical TBR Who. For some reason, I literally read 3 books off of my physical TBR. Everything else that I read was either an audiobook that I rented for free from Libby or something on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know what got into me because I've honestly been doing a really good job at sticking like mostly to my TBR. I feel like every single month I've obviously had things that I end up reading that I don't own already, but my main goal has been to try and continue getting through my physical TBR, and I feel like I've done really good at that up until September. In September I don't know, I was just like going crazy. I think it's just because it felt so good to like be out of a book slump that I was just like, I'm gonna read whatever I want. Woo! So we will first be talking about the 3 books that I read in physical form, and then the rest of these I will let you know if I audiobooked it or if it's just on Kindle Unlimited, whatever. So these are not in any order because I don't remember the order that I read them in. The first one that I have here is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Cruel Prince trilogy. This is a YA fantasy romance. Honestly, so light on the romance, but like heavy on the YA fantasy. I feel like, yes, you get a subplot of romance in this, but don't go into that wanting this. Go into it just wanting like very atmospheric, cozy fantasy vibes, like great plot, easy to read, easy to understand. Go in like wanting that and you'll love it. This book I rated 5 stars, which is crazy because I also rated the first book in the series 5 stars. So to have 2 5 stars back to back is like, you're shaping up to be one of my favorite series. So I'm so excited to read the 3rd book in this series. If you don't know what this series is about, you follow Jude and her 2 sisters. She is a human living in the land of fairy. Basically one day when she was a lot younger, something happened to where she had to go to the land of fairy to live, but it's super dangerous for her to live there because all of the fae are like so much stronger than she is, and also a lot of them just have like almost like a grudge against her because they see her as just like weak and they see her existence as useless because her lifespan is so much shorter than like that of the fae who live for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So she just has a really hard time trying to, I say this every time I talk about this book, but it's just like the best way to describe it. Like genuinely she is trying to just be strong in a world where she is like uncontrollably weak. Like everything around her is dangerous for her and she's trying to be strong and survive it basically. So love it, 5 stars. Had such a good time with this one. I just love it because it's like so fast paced and easy to understand. I just love it. That's the first one. The next one that we have is Two Twisted Crowns. I don't want to talk too much about this one because I feel like I have talked about it so much and I didn't love it, honestly. This is the second book in this duology, the Shepherd King duology. The first book in this duology is One Dark Window. I was super conflicted on how to rate these because I feel like the more that I think about them, the lower my rating goes. If I could go back and like change my rating, I probably would just rate them each a 3 because I don't love them, but I don't hate them. I would recommend them to the right person, but for me personally, it's just not my favorite type of fantasy that I have read. This was my first kind of dip my toe in the world of like dark gothic fantasy. So far, I don't think I really love gothic fantasy, but I don't want to like say that definitively because like I said, this duology is the only 2 gothic fantasies that I've read so far. So take it with a grain of salt. I might end up reading a gothic fantasy that's like completely different than this and absolutely love it. But as for now, I think maybe it's just not my cup of tea. I think on Goodreads, I rated this one 3.75 and rounded up to a 4. Looking back on that now, I would just rate it a 3. Like I said, I just got done talking about that actually, so I'm not gonna re-say that. But yeah, on Goodreads, it's 3.75, rounded up to a 4. But next up, Happy Place by Emily Henry. So this was actually my second Emily Henry book I've ever read and also my second 5-star Emily Henry book. This book ate so hard. When I would hear people talking about this book and how much they love it and how good it was, for some reason I have this thing in my head where like if a book gets super popular, I convince myself that I'm not going to be one of the ones that likes it. I don't know, and I don't know if that's me trying to like set myself up to not be disappointed or something, but for some reason, every single time a book gets super popular like this, even ACOTAR actually, I was super afraid to read that because I was like, you're just not gonna like it as much as everybody else. I don't know. I had convinced myself that I probably wasn't gonna like Emily Henry books the same way that everyone else does for some reason, but when I tell you, one book at a time, I'm slowly becoming Emily Henry's biggest fan. She is just the queen of like fitting funny and romantic with deep deeply emotional and kind of life-changing. Like somehow those two opposites merge into the beautiful masterpiece that is Emily Henry books, and it's just like amazing. And not only that, like that is all just, I feel like, the writing in general, but this book specifically, the main characters reminded me so much of me and Marky in so many different instances. Obviously not like completely, like I'm not like, oh, I am exactly this character, our relationship is exactly these two characters, like that's not necessarily what I mean, but there was just so many instances throughout this book where I was like, you know, and it was just, I don't know, I love this book. This was a 6-star read for me. Just so good. Emily Henry, Hall of Fame. And I actually did just order the hardcover of Beach Read. I know, and I think in my last video I was saying like I don't really know what order I should read the rest of the Emily Henry books, because I think I have 3 left that I haven't read: Beach Read, Book Lovers, and People We Meet on Vacation. I don't know where they are on my book stacks, but out of those 3 I was like, I don't know which one to read next, and I was kind of going back and forth on reading Beach Read last just because it's everyone's favorite, so I feel like what if it's my favorite too, and then I should like save it for last. But because I just ordered the hardcover and it's so pretty, I honestly kind of want to read that one next, and I'm so excited for it. I'm just so excited, but I'm like kind of afraid because I'm like, again, what if I just don't like it as much as other people, because a lot of people did not like Funny Story and a lot of people do not like Happy Place as much as her other books, and so far both of those have been 5 stars for me, so I'm like a little bit afraid. But I don't know, I just feel like at this point I can't imagine myself not absolutely loving anything that Emily Henry writes, so we're just gonna test it out and see. But really quickly, if you don't know what Happy Place is about, you basically follow a friend group in this book, and every single year they go on an annual vacation together at one of the friends' family's vacation houses. But this year after the trip, her dad is selling it, so this will essentially be their last friend vacation that they can do at this house, and they have gone on vacation at this house for years and years and years, so it's like a tradition that they have. So they're all like really sad and emotional about it, and that's like a huge theme about this book, is like nostalgia, and I feel like she put into words the feeling of nostalgia better than I ever could have like described it. And I am very much the type of person where I like try and hold on to moments as hard as I can, like especially with my kids and stuff like that. Like there was this one quote in the book, I don't think I'll be able to find it. It was talking about a moment where you basically just feel so happy that it starts to make you think about when this moment is over, you will never be able to like physically be in this moment again. Like this is the only time that you will be able to experience this moment, and it's like you basically start grieving the moment before it's even over because it's like slowly slipping out of your hands. And I'm just like, I feel that all of the time, and I just feel like I romanticize so many different like small moments because of that too, because I just want to hold on to everything, because I don't want to look back at moments and then they later on become sentimental, and then I'm like, I wish I enjoyed that more in the moment. So I'm like very much trying to like enjoy everything as much as I can in the moment, if that makes sense. But basically you're following this friend group. They find out that this is going to be the last trip that they can take to the vacation house together, and the couple that you're following, Harriet and Wen, recently got engaged. They've been dating for years and years and years and years, and before the trip, Harriet and Wen actually call off their engagement, but neither of them end up telling either their friends because they just can't find the right time to tell them, and then they both end up getting invited to this trip. And they decided, like, for a friend vacation, since we broke up, you'll go on one, I'll go on one, and we'll alternate it that way, like we don't put them in a position where they have to choose. But then Harriet shows up to the vacation and Wen is there, and she's like, why are you here? Like, why are you here? This is so awkward. And then they end up having to fake that they never broke up their engagement because they don't want to ruin the memory of the last trip that they'll have at the lake house. And that's basically the story that you're following in this book. You follow Harriet and Wen and them trying to play it off like they are still together throughout this entire trip. And from that description, I know that it does not sound deeply emotional and like life-changing and all this stuff, but like I swear it's so much more than that, because like with the friend group, you learn so much about the entire friend group. Like I feel like genuinely each character in this book has so much depth to them and like their own little side thing. I don't know. I just love this book so much. And if you haven't read it yet, please read it. It's so good. I cannot wait to read another Emily Henry book. Those are the 3 books that I have in physical form. Let me look and see. Okay, the next book that I have on this list is Scarlet Angel. So that is the 3rd book in the Mindfuck series that is available on Kindle Unlimited. I read it on my Kindle. I have been talking about the Mindfuck series in so many of my videos, so I'm not going to necessarily describe fully what it is, but basically it's a book of 5 different separate novellas novellas, and it is a serial killer romance. And basically you follow a serial killer who kills out of revenge, and she starts dating an FBI agent whose job is specifically to hunt down serial killers. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse type of thing, but it's so much deeper than that. Definitely, like, if you have heard someone say like, oh, it's like Butcher and Blackbird, I would not go off of that. I've heard that so many places, and I honestly would not go off that, because Butcher and Blackbird, like, I've read both. Butcher and Blackbird and that whole series is very much more like rom-com vibes. Like, even though it's about a serial killer and it has gory scenes in it, it's very much less serious than the Mindfuck series. The Mindfuck series is just so much more serious. It goes into things, I feel like, a lot more in depth. It has a lot more darker themes as well, whereas like the premise and like storyline of the Butcher and Blackbird series is just overall a lot more lighthearted. And I never thought I would be saying that a serial killer romance is lighthearted, because it's not necessarily lighthearted. It's just in comparison to the Mindfuck series, it seems lighthearted, because the Mindfuck series is just very heavy. Like, if you are easily triggered by things, please, I beg you, look up the trigger warnings before going into the Mindfuck series, because it's just a lot. But it's so good. Like, I rated it, I think I rated this one 4.5. Overall is a 5-star series for me. And actually, while I'm talking about this one, I'll just talk about All the Lies and Paint It Red as well. I'm kind of like looping them into one, because those are the last 2 novellas in the series. I read all 3 of these this month. I read the first 2 in August and then the last 3 in September. Each book just kept getting better and better, and I couldn't space it out any farther. Like, I would finish one and just immediately have to know what happened next, because every single one leaves on a cliffhanger. And I think the last 2 novellas in the series, I rated them both 5 stars, because I was just like, what? My entire review for the last book is just 5 stars, holy shit, because I had no words. I was just like, what? So yeah, that series is gonna stay with me for a very long time. It was so good. But yeah, that is 3 of the books that I read this month. After that, I have That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. This is the first book in the Queen's Cove series. It's like a small town romance series, and each book follows one of the different brothers. That's like a big family in this small town. I wanted to read this because one of my favorite romance authors is Stephanie Archer. I love her Vancouver Storm series. It's a hockey series. So far, the 2 books that I've read in that series have both been 5 stars. Just something about her writing in that series is just perfection for me. I just love it so much. And so after reading those 2 books, and while waiting for the next book in the series to come out, I decided to look into her backlist and try out some of her older books. And actually, I want to look up when That Kind of Guy was written, because I feel like in that book I could tell a difference in the writing. Like, it was still good, but it just wasn't like Behind the Net and The Fake Out. And obviously it might just be because it's like in a different series, in a different world with a different set of characters. But okay, it was the first book that she published, so I feel like that makes sense. So I ended up rating that one 3 stars. It was cute, but just like, I don't know, it didn't really stand out as far as like romances goes. It was just like a cute little small town romance. It had one of those storylines, which I honestly love so much in romances, because I read a lot of romantasy, and I love like a high stakes enemies to lovers romantasy. And so sometimes whenever I go to pick up romances, I love when the plot is just like so outrageous where it's like not even believable. Like, the plot in this book is so funny. So the male main character of this book wants to become voted mayor, but he doesn't think that anyone will vote him mayor of the town, because he's known to be like the town's bachelor. Like, he's I almost said play bunny. He's like a playboy. Is that the right word? I don't know. He's just like a bachelor. So he doesn't think anyone's gonna take him seriously. And then the female main character of this book wants to buy the restaurant that she has been working at. It's like her lifelong dream to own a restaurant. And she's been working at this restaurant, becoming super close to the owner for years, and has been promised that when the owner leaves the restaurant, that the restaurant will be left to her. But now it's time for the owner to leave the restaurant, and she goes to apply for a loan to buy the restaurant from the owner, and they deny her for the loan. So she needs someone to co-sign for her, but she's like not close to any of her parents. She doesn't really have anyone that could co-sign for her. So her dreams are about to go out the window. And then the male main character goes up to her with this idea to have them fake date, because everyone in the town like loves and trusts her and knows her, so that he thinks like, oh, if we're dating, they'll see that you picked me, so like I'm actually a trustworthy guy that will make people vote for me. So whatever. He comes to her and proposes this idea, and she's like, I'll do it if you co-sign for me to be able to buy the restaurant. And so essentially that's like how they end up in this fake dating thing, which we all know I love fake dating so much. But it's so funny because it's like a rom-com, and so it just slowly keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and by the end of it you're just like, how did we end up here? Like, this is so crazy. But I just love that in romances sometimes, especially like rom-coms. Like, I either want them to be like an Emily Henry book where I'm gonna sob my eyes out and it will genuinely change me as a person, or I want something just like completely out of pocket but it's cute and funny, you know? Anyway, that's what that's about. I rated it 3 stars. It wasn't anything crazy, but like it wasn't bad. It was just like a middle of the road romance for me. But I was wondering if that was her first book that she had published or something, because I feel like the writing in the Vancouver Storm series is just so good. By both of those books, Behind the Net and The Fake Out, was like by the 4th chapter I was like, I love this book. It's gonna be at least a 4-star, possibly a 5-star. Obsessed. So that's that book. I gotta stop yapping so much because we're gonna be here for 45 minutes at this rate. After that, I have Listen for the Lie. This is one that I actually audiobooked, and I specifically wanted to listen to the audiobook for this one because it follows a true crime podcast, and I love listening to books that have like a podcast element because I feel like it just enhances the reading experience of it because you get to hear the podcast format. It sounds like you're genuinely listening to the parts of the podcast where they like put it in the book. So in this book, you're basically following Lucy. Years and years ago, one of her best friends, Savvy, was found murdered, and the last person to have seen her was Lucy. And when Savvy was found, Lucy was also missing, and then Lucy was found, and she was found covered in Savvy's blood. So it was kind of presumed that Lucy did something to Savvy, but the only issue is that Lucy has no memory of that night. So they were kind of never really able to figure out what happened to Savvy, and Lucy ends up moving away from the small town because she just like can't live a normal life there anymore. Like, everyone associates her to being the person who murdered Savvy, and it's like a very small town. And one day, a true crime podcast hears about the story of Savvy, thought it was interesting, and decided to do a season on the murder of Savvy. Lucy ends up back in the small town, ends up meeting with the podcaster, and she realizes maybe he could help figure out who really killed her, because she genuinely believes like, I didn't kill her, but I also don't have any memory of the night, so like I don't know. So she very much just wants to figure out what happened to Savvy, and so they start working together to try and uncover the pieces. And this was so good. I rated it 4 stars. It was genuinely like thrilling, and also I feel like it was very interesting because the female main character was a little bit different than any other main character I've read about, especially in a thriller. It very much was like female rage and like an imperfect character. I don't know. So I just thought it was really interesting the way that she was written, because she definitely was not a perfect character. Like, she definitely had flaws, but I feel like because of that, it was such a good read, because it was like, I don't know who to trust. Like, you can't even trust the main character because she just says questionable things or like thinks questionable things. Just everyone's actions, you're like, and by the end of it, I was listening to it while I was like making dinner or something, and like my heart was racing. Like, it was genuinely thrilling, and I did not see the end coming. I loved the mystery plot. I thought it was super fast paced and entertaining. Overall, just like a really good thriller. I would highly recommend this thriller if you have been thinking about reading it. I feel like going into the fall and winter is a great time to read it. I mean, thrillers and mysteries in general, I feel like fall is just the perfect time to read those. And if you like audiobooks, I highly would recommend this one as an audiobook as well. I really enjoyed the audiobook for it. After that, we have The Lost Sisters, which this is a little novella in the Folk of the Air trilogy. It's literally, I think, just over 100 pages. I don't know. It's super short. And basically, in the first book, you follow Jude. So The Lost Sisters is a novella from her twin sister's point of view. A lot of people that I've seen talk about this say, oh, I would just skip it. You don't really have to read it, whatever. However, I really enjoyed reading it because before I even knew that the novella was written from Jude's twin sister's point of view, Taryn, at the end of the first book, I remember thinking to myself, like, I wish that throughout this book we had gotten a couple of her POVs just so I could hear like her perspective or like her thought process or like what was going on that end. And so whenever I started this novella and realized that it was in her POV, like the entire thing, I was so happy because it just like gives you that tiniest little bit of insight. I don't know, I feel like it really just ties a lot of things together from the first book and answers a lot of questions that I had after finishing the first book, if that makes sense. And like I said, it's like super short and quick and easy. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. I feel like it's definitely worth the read. If you're like me and you like a lot of backstory, then I feel like you would enjoy it. I rated it 3.5 stars. The next one I have is This Spells Love by Kate Robb. This one was was so cute. I actually listened to the audiobook for this one as well. This was such a cute and fun little like witchy romance. Essentially, this girl has a really bad breakup. She's like out drinking with her sister, her aunt, and her guy best friend. And at the end of the night, they're all drunk. They end up in her like witchy aunt's little bookshop, and they end up casting a spell for her to like forget anything and everything that has to do with her ex, like basically make it to where they never got together. And instead of it doing that, it transports her to like an alternate reality, but she's the only one that has memory of that night. And so she ends up in this alternate reality. She's like living in a different house, but like all the same people are there, and she's like trying to figure out, one, all the differences in this world versus the one that she came from, and two, how to get back to her timeline. And I just thought the premise for that was so cool. Honestly, from that premise, I was expecting like a pretty unserious, just like fun time, you know, like some books you just go into wanting a fun time. Like I don't need it to change my life. I don't need to relate to the characters really. Like I don't need it to be profound. I just want to have a good time, you know? And for this one, I was like, I just want to have a fun little Halloween romance good time. But I feel like I got a lot more from this book than I expected. One, I ended up relating to the main character a lot more than I originally anticipated. There was just like a lot that she said where I was just like, ooh girl, I see you. That's so valid. But also it was a lot funnier than I was anticipating. I really liked the writing style. It very much felt like watching a fall Halloween rom-com, but also I feel like it did kind of get a little bit deep like within the romance plotline, because she essentially gets to a point where she has to choose if she even wants to go back to her timeline. So I don't know, I feel like there was like a couple things in there. It just was like a little bit more deep than I was anticipating. Not to say it was super deep and like super profound, but it was just more than what I originally expected from. But it was really good. I rated it 4 stars. I would highly recommend it. After that, we have Gone Girl. I rated this one 4 stars. Let me read you my review actually from Goodreads, because it just like perfectly sums up my feelings for this. Reading this book felt like when your best friend says, I've got some tea, and then the entire time when they say something crazy, you gasp and say, no. And then they respond with, yeah, and just wait, it gets crazier. And I feel like there's genuinely no better way to describe this. It just felt so drama, and it was like, what? And I feel like this is one of those books where through the first half of the book you're not expecting much because of the way it's set up, but then there's like stuff revealed that completely changes, well for me, it completely changed my perspective on the first half of the book and made my previous opinion of the book up to that point change kind of, because it like connected things well, and I was like, okay, so there was a reason for that. I think that was supposed to annoy me on purpose, you know, things like that. But essentially in this book you were following a married couple, and on the morning of their anniversary the wife of this couple goes missing. So you are kind of following the husband in the process of working with the police of finding out where she is. So you basically just follow the husband and the process of uncovering different hints to figure out where the wife went. And it's so much more than that, and very entertaining. It was a wild ride for sure. I rated it 4 stars. It's honestly kind of on the longer side, but it was still good. After that, I have Leather and Lark, and I actually listened to the audiobook for this one, which is a crazy experience. I also listened to the audiobook of Butcher and Blackbird, which, if you know, these books are very like, first of all, there's like gory scenes in them, but they're also very spicy, and the spice is like a lot. Not like, I mean, not like it's super frequent, but when there is spice, it's just like a lot. So I don't know why I chose to listen to the audiobook for the first and second book, but what I will say about the audiobook is the voice actor. He has I think it's Irish. Maybe is it Irish? I don't know. He has an accent though. I think that he does such a good job. Even the female main character, both of them do such a good job with the narration. And I think it was the same 2 people for the first book as well. Anyway, Leather and Lark, it is the second book in this, what is it called? The Ruinous Love trilogy. It's basically about serial killers. It's another serial killer romance. Oh, this is the one I was talking about earlier actually. So this is like if you take the Mindfuck series but make it spicy rom-com, that's what you get. So like they're similar in the fact that they both are about serial killers, but like one is very much more serious than the other. This one, definitely check the trigger warning still. Honestly, the trigger warnings for these books are kind of insane. I'm gonna read you some of these. I won't read you all of them because some of them I'm just like, I don't want to. But also I will say, reading the book, I feel like a lot of these are not as bad as they sound. Like in the first book, it says accidental cannibalism, and like when I read that in the trigger warning list, I was like, what? I genuinely almost didn't read the book. Was not as bad as what you were expecting. I can promise you it was not. I mean, still go off of your own gut for the trigger warnings, but like in my humble opinion, it was not as bad as what I was expecting. This says eyeballs and eye sockets, amateur surgery. Oh, that's so funny. This one has accidental cannibalism too, which now that I think about it, I do remember. So it's gross. Yeah, so actually I'm not gonna read the rest but basically, I don't know, that's what it's about. It was crazy. I rated it 3.75. That's all I'll say about that one. I think I covered all the books. If I missed any, sorry. Like I said, it was a really great reading month for me. The fall and the winter are like the best months of the year for me. So I genuinely every single day am feeling my happiness come back to me, and I'm ready to live the best few months of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you are not already subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. I would love to have you guys here with me. I try to post videos once a week. Sometimes you get an extra video if I'm super ultra productive, but I am also a stay-at-home mom, so sometimes I don't have the time. But yeah, make sure to subscribe. That's it for today's video. I will see you guys in the next one.